What's up, everyone? Franco here with Frank Analysis. We're going to talk about all the craziness that's happening right now in Jerusalem, in Palestine. But first, I want to remind you guys to please like, share, and subscribe if you have not yet subscribed. And the best way that you can support me, since I am a demonetized channel, is if you support me over on Rockfin. You can follow me or subscribe for $10 a month. You don't have to subscribe, or you can subscribe to another content creator and you get access to all the premium content, to all the content creators who are there. There's Jimmy Dore, Slow News Day, Nico House, The Combo Couch. You'll find us all there. Richard Medhurst. So I just want to start out by saying that Israel is not a country. They are illegally occupying Palestine and ethnically cleansing Palestinians. And please do me a favor, if you're not too familiar with what's going on, or even if you are familiar with it, I highly recommend supporting these two documentaries. If you've not yet watched these documentaries, please watch it. Share them. Even if you saw it already, share it, because YouTube is really suppressing these two documentaries here. There's The Steal of the Century, the first one. The Steal of the Century, which is by Robert Inlet. It's on his YouTube channel, Robert Inlet. I've had him on before to discuss Palestine and what's going on there. He's going to be on the show on Thursday this week, so we can go more in depth with what's happening. And the other documentary is Abby Martin's documentary called Gaza Fights for Freedom. It's on her YouTube channel called Empire Files. She just made that documentary free on YouTube because of everything that's going on, and she wants to spread awareness about what's going on. And again, people are saying that they type in the title of the documentary and then it doesn't pop up on YouTube. So the best way that you can help spread awareness about the treatment that Palestinians are receiving in their country that's being occupied is by sharing these videos. Now, in the footage of those documentaries, you see children, they're shot and killed. These people have no electricity. Families are getting abused by the occupiers that are there. There's no water. They are confined to a small perimeter. When people do have access to water, it's toxic. It leads to diseases. It could be cured easily, but it can't because of a lack of resources. Israel is annexing their land. The Israeli soldiers who have more guns and bombs and weapons, we see them abusing Palestinians in that footage. And Robert Inlet confronts one of the soldiers on there, and then we see him say that no one cares. That's what the soldier says. No one cares. Palestinians have to carry around an ID card with them, something that the Israelis don't have to do. So the more that you read about what's going on from independent sources, not from the biased and bought off sources from mainstream news or these independent channels that repeat State Department talking points, but if you read the independent sources, you see that there's no, the two sides are being abusive. No, it's not two sides being abusive. It's one side that's being abusive and being funded by Western powers. And then there's the other side that's being occupied, that's getting abused, that's having their rights taken away, and they're being ethnically cleansed. It's really hard to believe that a side that's being funded financially and militaristically by countries like the US and the UK are the ones that are being oppressed. So Human Rights Watch, which you can follow on Twitter at HRW, they released a report that shows that Israel is committing apartheid against the Palestinian people. Now, let me read this to you guys. This is the United Nations Resolution 3743, which was dated back in December 3rd, 1982. This resolution reaffirms that the legitimacy of the struggle of peoples for independence, territorial integrity, national unity, and liberation from colonial and foreign domination and foreign occupation by all available means, including armed struggle. So Palestinians have a right to be defending themselves from their occupiers. So that's some brief background of what's been going on there for decades now. Decades. Like, things have been getting progressively worse and worse and worse. So pretty much now what's happening, which I will read and go more into depth with Robert Inlet's article, is that a majority of Israelis do not want any Arabs in their government. They don't want any Palestinians whose land they are occupying to be in their government. This is insane. Can you imagine if in the United States there weren't the majority of people didn't want any black people to be in government still? At one point that was the case, but can you imagine if that was still the case? As a matter of fact, I can't think of any Native American that serves in our government or any prolific Native American that serves in our government. And no, Elizabeth Warren does not count. She's like less than what 1% Native American. That does not count. I guess Tulsi Gabbard, Native Hawaiian, that probably counts. But this is a sign of how much of an imperialist country the United States is, right? And an imperialist nation is going to support other imperialist nations. So now in Israel, there are religious Zionists that are the product of Zionist propaganda, right? Their mainstream media there in Israel spreads a lot of Zionist propaganda to the people that brainwashes them to hate the indigenous people there in Palestine. They're politicians that are racist and Zionist, the imperialists who fund this country. These Zionists are a result of that. And right now they're out and marching into the streets of Jerusalem. They're shouting death to Arabs. And they're attempting to storm one of the holiest sites for Muslims, which is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And they're trying to storm into it during Ramadan, which is a sacred holiday for Muslims. So I just want to play a little bit of this video. This is from the Soapbox. And it says, it is truly disturbing to watch them celebrate while a tree burns nearby the Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of the holiest Islamic sites. And before I read that article, I want to show this tweet here by Andrew Yang, because he's running for New York City mayor right now, and I've had people on to talk about how much of a elitist this guy is and is not a man of the people. Here's some more evidence to show that he does not care about working class people. He doesn't care about black and brown people in the global south, and he does not care about informing himself about what's actually happening, which means he's not an anti-imperialist candidate. Says, I'm standing with the people of Israel who are coming under bombardment, attacks, and condemn the Hamas terrorists. The people of New York City will always stand with our brothers and sisters in Israel who face down terrorism and persevere. First of all, he does not speak for all New York City residents or civilians. Right? Not everybody is going to stand with an imperialist country in an apartheid state like Israel. But like I said, this further shows Andrew Yang cares more about making his elite circle more happy than he cares about working class people. And again, he doesn't care about people in the global south. So what point is there in having diversity in among our mayors across our country if they're going to be for the oppression of other minorities in other countries? And then here's what I said. How did anyone who call themselves progressive support this warmonger? Andrew Yang is an imperialist. If he doesn't care about the abused and oppressed Palestinians who are being ethnically cleansed, and he doesn't care about then he doesn't care about any of you, especially you New Yorkers. And again, I've had people on my show to talk about how Andrew Yang is going to work more with corporations and he is going to work with the people of New York. On my show, I had on Ricky Rance, Ed Lee. Charles was also with me. And then we even debated, me and Ricky, we even discussed with Matt Skidmore, who is a big supporter of Andrew Yang, about all these criticisms that we have about Andrew Yang. One thing I'm glad that I'm seeing, though, is that he is getting dragged for this. I've seen a lot of people in independent media and other people who keep up with independent media or who understand what's going on with Palestine that are calling his ass out for this. He more than deserves that. So here's the article by Robert Inlet. This is on the Last American Vagabond website. and it discusses what's going on. And I'm gonna have him on the show on Thursday, and we're gonna go more in depth about what's going on. I'm gonna ask him some questions. So it says Netanyahu poised to spark third intifada if it means saving himself politically. This Wednesday, Israeli President Reuven Rivlin tasked Yair Lapid with forming a government after Prime Minister Netanyahu failed to do so in 28 days. Lapid, who heads the Yesh Atid party, now has the task of somehow pulling together right and left wing anti Netanyahu parties in order to complete the task of dethroning Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been prime minister longer than any other in history. Netanyahu's right wing Likud party did manage to win the most seats of any party in Knesset, but could not bring together enough parties in order to meet a 61 seat marker required to form a government. The threat now remains of the anti Netanyahu groups coming together in order to destroy the current prime minister. However, given their vast political differences, it does seem unlikely. Yair Lapid now has the backing of a Palestinian Israeli party, potentially offering to join a coalition government. The current premier's problem when it comes to forming a coalition including an Arab party was twofold. He would lose the support of the religious Zionism slate if he did, and would likely take a hit politically, as including Arabs in government is considered a taboo amongst many right-wingers. No Arab party, as Israelis call them, has ever been included in a coalition government, despite many times, as part of the Arab Joint List, winning the third most seats of any party in the Knesset. Currently, it is believed that only 29% of Israeli Jews support Arabs being ministers and included in coalition governments. That support drops to only 13% among right-wingers. For a moment, just imagine that only 29% of white Americans or Brits supported black people being in government. It would most definitely reveal a racist mentality in these countries, and reporting would reflect this. Yet in the case of Israel, it is completely ignored. Yeah, it's completely ignored, and we see people like Andrew Yang, who's supposed to be a progressive, and some people considered him to be anti-imperialist, is supporting Israel here. He made a miscalculation if he considers himself to be some kind of anti-corporate and progressive politician. Like those days of Obama supporting Israel and all these other Democrats supporting Israel is over. Like, we see through that now. More people see through that now. People are more informed now. The possibility of the Jane list working with Yair Lapid Yesh Atid may be far stretched, but it was to occur. But if it was to occur, it would certainly make history. However, the fact that the joint list is even considering this could be trampled on in the face of an uprising over attacks on the old city of Jerusalem during Ramadan. Netanyahu is still currently prime minister, and in order to hold on, he must do all that's within his power to ensure that his opposition does not oust him, thus sending Israel to the fifth election since 2019. In order to win next time, he has to calculate as to how he can further divide his political enemies and bring on board either more voters or right-wing parties to his side. What the Israeli prime minister cannot do is lose the religious Zionism state, which is only growing in its support and has now been allowed into the Knesset by Netanyahu. The religious Zionism party is a pro-settler extremist group by most standards, which includes racist and convicted criminals. Under it, the religious Zionist state falls in the Jewish power party, Osma Yehudit, which ideologically hails the ideals of Kahanism and is directly connected to the racist settler group Lahava, which organized the recent Death to Arabs protest in Jerusalem. These settler organizations, being tied to religious Zionism, are now preparing to take to the streets of Jerusalem again, this time in an attempt to storm the Al Aqsa Mosque during Ramadan. It is expected that anywhere up to 30,000 settlers may show up for the storming of the site, which Palestinians vow to stop. This event may well lead to a unified Palestinian uprising, sparking the Third Intifada, which had been in the making for weeks now. If Netanyahu wanted, he could take measures to prevent the settlers from attempting to storm the third holiest site in Muslims during Ramadan, yet instead, it looks like he will work to facilitate it. Netanyahu allowing the settler protest is no mistake. He wishes to keep religious Zionism on his side and do all that he can to prevent his opposition from forming a coalition government, a full-on confrontation with the Palestinians, either as part of an intifada or Israel launching a war on Gaza, is guaranteed to shake up the political scene. So at this point, there is no doubt that there are many calculations being made on the Israeli side, but this could all backfire very badly. Once again, these Palestinians are defending themselves. All right, there would have been no Hamas if there was no Israel occupying that state. Like if you want to think about how you can prevent terrorism, how about you don't interfere with other countries and try to form an occupied state there? How about you try to not steal land and resources from these countries? That's how you can prevent terrorism from happening. So I stand with the people of Palestine, free Palestine, especially during these horrible times right now. I'll see you guys later. And again, I'll be discussing this in more depth with Robert and Lakesh on Thursday. Take care, everybody. Stay informed.